Good evening and welcome to the Midweek Bible Study for the East Allen County Church of Christ. We're glad to have you with us. If you have the opportunity, we'd invite you to come and to visit with us. We'd love to meet you and to get to know you and spend some time with you. Doing the right thing can sometimes be difficult to do. And it seems that sometimes doing the right thing, some people will do the right thing and complain, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute, that scenario. Some people complain all the time. It doesn't seem to really matter what's going on or how bad things are. And they're very difficult to be around, and I don't think anybody likes working with someone you would classify as a complainer. But they are out there. There seem to be two methods or methodologies to accept how a person who complains operates. Some would say if you can't do it and love it, then just don't do it. If you can't do it and like it, then just don't do it. And these two alternatives are doing the right thing and disliking it, or not doing the right thing at all. There seems to be, for some people, those only two alternatives. Either do the right thing and like it, or don't do the right thing at all. I mean, because after all, and this is what often will be tacked onto that, doesn't God want people to just do it out of the goodness and cheerfulness of their heart? And so if you can't do it that way, then you shouldn't do it. One of the measures of growing up and being a mature person is subjecting my feelings to my values. And that's something you have to learn as an adult. Now, some adults have not learned that lesson, but they should have. Very often, imagine if you took that logic of just doing what you felt like doing. What about in the morning when your alarm clock goes off and you wake up and you're tired and maybe you haven't had a good night's sleep? Are you going to just say, well, I don't feel like going to work today, I'm just going to stay in? Well, some people do, and some people don't get their bills paid. So what I'm saying is sometimes our responsibilities require us to get up and to move and to do things and to live a life that is based on our responsibility, not just our ability to like what it is. Jesus' submission to his Father's will was one that was incredible. Jesus said, I have a baptism to be baptized with, and how great is my distress until it's accomplished, in Luke 12:50. I don't know that you could say that Jesus had nothing but pleasure when he was here on earth. In fact, a lot of what he did was not pleasurable. I don't know how much of his memory he kept from heaven. He came down to us from there, and I can't imagine leaving that to be here and to be plagued with the concept and the idea that I left heaven to be here with people, many of whom don't understand me, don't get me, don't know me, many of whom hate me. And I've come here to save them all and to help them all. But here I am, and if you'll remember, in Jesus' prayer prior to his crucifixion, he prayed that this cup would be taken from him. In other words, if the crucifixion could be taken away and there's an alternative in how this whole plan of God could be carried out, then he was more than willing to accept that and go along with that. Otherwise, and he ended his prayer with this. He said, not my will, but your will. Not mine, but thine. Not my will, but your will. And I think sometimes if we're not careful about the happy attitude that people need to have, we might leave the wrong impression. Should we at some point, should we always hate serving God? The answer to that's absolutely not. But should everything about serving God mean that I'm happy and pleasurable and it soothes me and it pets my ego and my heart and my head and I'm rewarded immediately for everything? That's not true anywhere in biblical history, and certainly not with God's main characters we read about in the Bible or anybody else that we read about. In Matthew 11, verses 28 to 30, Jesus says this. He says, Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So what does it mean that Jesus is gentle and lowly in heart? He's not so prideful that he doesn't understand the burdens that you carry. I think one of the things about Christianity that we struggle with is the concept that Jesus doesn't get what it's like to be one of us. God doesn't understand what it's like to be one of us. Well, first of all, he knew that before Jesus came here. God is omniscient, and what that means is he knows all things. And that's not just facts about technology and things like that. He knows all things. He knows the heart of man. He knows our mindset. He knows our problems, our priorities. He knows where we mess up. He knows where we succeed. He knows our strengths. He knows our weaknesses. He knows everything there is to know about us, and it's easily said that he knows more about us than we know about ourselves. But knowing that, Jesus says, I know life is hard. And I want to make it easier for you. One of the things we need to understand is that Jesus is not here to make our life harder. He's here to make it easier. Can you imagine a world, and we've mentioned this in previous devotionals, and I'll probably mention it in future devotionals and future sermons. What would the world be like if everybody was like Jesus wanted us to be? What would the world be like? It would be a radically different place. And we recognize that and we see that. In 2 Corinthians 9, verses 6 to 8, now this I say, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. He who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each one must do just as he has purposed in his heart, not grudgingly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that always having all sufficiency in everything, you may have an abundance for every good deed. It is God's intention for us that we obey him cheerfully. But that doesn't mean that everything we do will be easy, without burden, or without sacrifice. And that's always going to be difficult for us. There's no shame in the idea that as I serve God, sometimes I shed tears. Sometimes it's hard for me as a person. That doesn't mean that I'm not a person that belongs to God. It doesn't mean that I'm not faithful. But it does mean that the priority is on being and doing what God wants me to be and what he wants me to do. And putting aside the concepts that somehow those things aren't as important. Psalm 40 and verse 8, I delight to do your will, O my God. Your law is within my heart. Obeying God's will ought to give us joy. Again, now here's a word that to our modern current vernacular, joy means happiness, but that's not exactly what joy always means. Joy means satisfaction with a circumstance. Happiness is joy. It's satisfaction with a moment, what's going on right now, what's happening right now, a happenstance. Something happened, made me happy. I deemed it as good. Joy, I can have joy even though I am sacrificing everything about myself, even though I'm obeying the will of God, even though I'm becoming the man he wants me to be. It's tough to be on the anvil, or it's tough to be smelted down and have the dross removed. It hurts. It's painful. And I think for those people in this world, and some in the church, who believe that everything ought to be about happiness, it ought to be about, and I'm not saying that there aren't many things that we should be the happiest people on earth. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be happy. And I'm not saying Christianity is something where we ought to go around wearing a frown all the time, because that is exactly what this verse is not saying. The psalmist says, I delight to do your will. I want to. I live for. I breathe. My heart beats to do the will of God. And that's a determination and a persistence that goes through all things. There will be times when it will be magnificent and beautiful and glorious, victorious and joyful. And there'll be times when it's tough and it's hard, and there might be tears involved, and you walk on your knees while you're praying your way through a circumstance in life while obeying God. And so when we talk about that psalm, David meant what he said when he says, your law is within my heart. It's got to be something that I internalize. One of the ways I grow and develop spiritually is by understanding that what God wants for me is better than I could ever think I would want for myself. We have to accept that. That's called faith, by the way. Some people won't accept that, and they'll say, well, I don't believe that, and God doesn't exist, or whatever excuse they'll issue to take theirself away from that kind of obedience. But The truth is that I need to be a person and you need to be a person. If we're going to be joyful in our obedience, if I'm going to be cheerful in my obedience, I'm going to have to live through some circumstances, and there's something I've got to learn. If you will take the time to work your way through the tough circumstances in life, you will find that on the other side, we can be spiritually healthier and happier for having endured. Now, I'm not saying that if you're doing something and you're making bad decisions, sinful decisions in your life, and you're saying to yourself, well, I need to work through this, and God didn't put you in a position because you were unfaithful to Him. Yes, you do need to be faithful. Yes, you do need to work your way through it. And God can even take you from that circumstance and help you to become helpful to someone else who's made also bad decisions. But sometimes you can make good decisions and still pay a price, a heavy, hard price. Sometimes it's harder to do what's right in this world, because there are a lot of people that don't want you to do what's right if it means it's going to cost them something, because the sacrifice may not only be yours, it might also be theirs. One of the things I'm mindful of all the time in ministry is my wife and I engaged in this process some time ago, and we both were excited about it. We both wanted to do it. Along the way, we had a little girl, and our daughter was born into this process. She didn't have an opportunity to make a decision about what it is she wanted to do in terms of being in ministry, because when you're a minister, no matter what anybody says, the truth is that your whole family's involved. And everything that happens to you, much of it is going to happen to them. My wife is a wonderful Christian woman. My daughter is a beautiful Christian young lady, both children of God, and for that I'm supremely grateful. But I was born into that circumstance, and my daughter was born into that circumstance. I made the decision to be there. I have to be mindful that, along the way, every sacrifice we've made, much of those sacrifices have been as a family. And so I'm not saying that to say anything about myself. I am blessed beyond my worth. I love what I do. I love the Lord, and I have no problem whatsoever with the things I have or don't have in life as a result of ministry. But what I'm saying is that we as people need to understand that doing the hard things sometimes is going to come at a cost. Even doing the right thing sometimes can come at a cost. I will, when I leave this world, I hope to be preaching the gospel. I hope to be teaching a class or a lesson, and the Lord just takes me. That'll be fine with me. Or take me while I'm asleep, or what. Any of those things is fine. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop being a Christian, and because someone comes along and says, "Oh, well, I don't think that's. I just think that whole Christian thing is it's. I don't believe in God." Well, okay, you don't believe in God. I do. I have staked my life on my faith, and again, it's not always been easy, but God has always been there to bless me and take care of me, and I know He loves me. If I stand before the furnace, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they say, okay, you're going to walk through the furnace, I guess I'm going through the furnace. I don't know that I'll come back out like they did. Maybe I will. But whether I do or whether I don't, God is still God. And if I have to do something that's hard, and I appreciate so much the examples of our Old Testament and New Testament forefathers. They faced what they had to face. Sometimes it was so hard. I can't imagine Abraham putting his son on an altar for sacrifice with the intention of sacrificing him. And we know that what he thought was, well, I'll take his life, but God will raise him back up. But can you imagine what must have been going through his mind? And the heartbreak of what was happening at that moment. I'm a father, and I can't imagine it. I'm so proud of Abraham and what he did on the one hand, and I'm not sure as a man I could do that, but God's not asked me to do that, and He knows all of our limitations. He knows what we can do and what we can't do, and I'm pretty sure God knows that if you're going to ask me to do something, that's beyond my mechanical ability. I apologize for the break. We had a little technical difficulty there. I got a phone call while I was taping, so anyway. So if you see me buzzing in now, we're just breaking back in to try to finish out this Devo. In 1 John 5 verses 1 to 3, John writes this. He said, "Whoever believes that Jesus is the Christ is born of God. Whoever loves the Father loves the child born of him. By this we know that we love the children of God, when we love God and observe his commandments. For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not burdensome." If we love God, then obeying him should not be the burden in our life. I hope and pray that for you find yourself, first of all, obeying God. I pray that you're a Christian, that you have understood, read, and adhered your life to the tenets of the New Testament as a person of faith. If you're not, I pray that you'll become that you'll do that. We cannot have a relationship with God outside of obeying him. That's not going to happen. And for those who want to be Christians, who think that at some point we can decide not to obey him later on, then that's not an option either. We have to obey for our lives. It doesn't mean we won't fall. It doesn't mean we won't be perfect. But what it does mean is I don't have the option in the future of, because I'm super Christian now, I can suddenly make the rules up. I can suddenly change the rules. I can do whatever I want to do. That doesn't happen. The Bible doesn't change. It stays the same. So what will we do if we love God? We'll obey him. Burdensome is an interesting idea. I don't have a burden in taking care of my family. I'm sure you don't either. Fathers, mothers, husbands, wives, when somebody in your family is sick, it may be hard on you. Maybe you're working all day and you have to come home and take care of somebody, and some of those caregivers, God bless you. I'm aware of some circumstances in the world today of people who are absolutely stellar in the way that they look after and love their family and put their family first and take care of sadly sick folks in their home, and the things they have to do, the sacrifices they have to make. If you know someone who does this, you need to really appreciate them first of all and look for ways to help them. There may be, they might think initially, well, there's nothing you can do. Well, there are things we can do. Maybe you can sit with someone for just a little while that person goes to a movie or goes to the mall or maybe goes grocery shopping or does something that in their world they don't get to do. They don't get to go to the coffee place and drink a cup of coffee. They just don't get to do those kinds of things, and they may find it odd or weird. Because if they haven't done them in a long time, or maybe ever, because they haven't had the opportunity, they might find what you would do very impressive and powerful in their life. And maybe you could do it on a regular basis or several times, and I'm sure that they would appreciate what you would offer. But what I'm saying is these are things we do for the people we love, and we don't sit back and say to ourselves, well, I can't. You just don't think about it. If you have a child that is sick and you take them to the hospital, I hope and pray I know that in the back of your mind maybe you're thinking, boy, this is going to be expensive. But you're not going to say, well, I'm not going to take them to the hospital because that's just going to be, if they need to go to the hospital, they really need to go. If they're truly, really sick and maybe not going to make it, the money is not an issue. I don't care about the money. We'll live. We'll do what we got to do. If I got to sleep in my car the rest of my life, save my child. That's the priority. Or save my spouse. Whatever you've got to do. And so we don't think about those things. When it comes to serving God, I'm not going to worry about the immediate cost. It may cost me dearly. It may cost me dramatically. But no matter what the cost is, we're talking about God. And he's never going to ask me to do something that is ultimately going to take all of the resources I will ever have, because the day will come when God will make everything right. We will have an opportunity to go home for all eternity and to be with him. And there's no price to pay here on earth that is greater than the reward we will receive in being with him. God bless you. I hope you have a great week. And thank you again for taking time to be with us. And I hope you'll be with us again next week. And again, sorry about the circumstance. The phone that I'm recording on also is the phone that I get calls on. So those things happen. I hope you have a great week, and God bless you.